Today, we're going to talk about construction and delays. Delays are inevitable in construction, and project delays cost lots of money, create lots of problems, and if not managed properly, they can really hurt your cash flow. My name is Scott Peper. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Mobilization Funding, and for the last 10 and a half years, we've been helping hundreds and hundreds of people in our network, clients and others, manage these delays and finding out new and creative ways to manage around them. Today, I'm going to talk about all of those things today and what you can do to be proactive and how you can react to each of those when they happen to you and in the moment. So let's get right into it. Okay, first, let's just talk about delays and understanding the impact they have to a project, but also to your cash flow. First, a delay. It's really as simple to be defined as any change in the original schedule that creates a longer period of time. It doesn't mean that the project gets completely delayed. It might mean a phase of the project gets delayed. It might mean that there's a delay in a start, but it doesn't necessarily mean it might be a delay in a finish. It typically does, but you can make up time. But delays and how they hurt cash flow, primarily for subcontractors, is going to be that labor that you have, your team. That team is not going to be laid off for the week or laid off for the 2 weeks that there's a delay. They're going to be somewhere. That increase in cost, it can be significant. It's particularly depending on the scope of work. If you're expecting to start a project today and it doesn't start for another 2 weeks, that extra 2 weeks of labor, unless you have another project or somewhere you can send to them or gain efficiencies with that labor force, it's going to create a cost. And that cost could be significant and it could be material to your overall project. So managing these types of things and how they occur, when they occur, you can do it both operationally, you can do it contractually for the project. And those are some of the things we're going to tackle when we go through that. So let's talk about the preemptive measures to handle it. So first, let's talk about contractually, and let's just stick to the project only, meaning the project that is at hand, the one that we're creating the delay, the one that your labor force is supposed to be on. And where this happens a lot too, you may hire, let's say you have a long project and you hire a project manager for it and you're expecting that project to be started, October 1st, for example. And instead it doesn't start till December 1st. Well, that's 2 months of salary for a project manager you may have. Now, if you have a labor force and you're expecting a 3, 4, 5 person crew to get on that job, or 2, 3, 4, 5 person crews to start that job, that could be as many as 3 to 10 different people that you're going to have on that project that aren't on the project. And so where do you do with them? What do you put those 10 people? So there's one thing you can do early on. If you're going to be married to the schedule and you can lock that schedule in, then you can also create opportunities for change orders to impact your labor depending on certain types of delays. Now, delays can be caused by a lot of different things, but if you're going to have a delay in the project, you can contractually create a cost or a way to invoice for that extra cost. And it's best to do that upfront and in your contract. So for example, you could include a clause that has any particular construction delay in schedule that impacts your labor force. This is the labor force that you plan to have on it. This is the cost of that labor force, or how you're going to invoice for that labor force, probably is the better way to go. And then that way, if there's a delay, you can point right back to your contract. You can show exactly how you're going to choose to invoice for it and charge for it. You can avoid a lot of delays if you didn't have it already outlined. So that's one route. The other route is operationally within your business. And depending on the size of your business, the scope of your business, the amount of work you have going on at any given time, perhaps you can operationally move that workforce that you align to this one project to 2 or 3 or 4 other projects. Perhaps maybe you can fabricate stuff in advance. Maybe you can put things and other stuff you can do inside the shop or at the office, or other ways that you can put this sales force or this labor force to work. However, if you can't, that's going to be a cost that you're going to have to manage. And so the third way is to handle it financially, and that is to build in a contingency into your bids. And that contingency can sometimes turn into profit. That contingency sometimes needs to get used, and it's built and aligned to these types of exact things. So if you budget based on the schedule to have your labor force out there for 15 weeks, it might make sense to have your bid include 20 weeks worth of labor or 18 weeks worth of labor in case there's some delays or in case it takes longer and you're trying to manage around that. So those are the three ways. You got contractual, operational, and then you have the functional methods. There's three ways to handle this. Contractually, upfront, how you're going to invoice for it, how you'll charge for it if a project's delayed. Then you have operationally, you have lots of different work and you can move that force around. And then you have contingency, where you build that extra cost into your budget, into your bid, so that when you are awarded that and there is a delay, you have room in your bid to handle that delay. All right, now let's talk about cash flow management during the actual delay. So you didn't cause the delay and you certainly can't end the delay, but you can manage yourself through the delay. And what do I mean by that? So we've talked about different ways to move the labor force around, but cash flow is one of the most important things to your business, and it's also the most important thing to making sure your project can be successful outside of actually performing the project well. So here's some things you can do. First, if you don't have a project cash flow set up from the very beginning, this is going to be very difficult for you to do. So my first suggestion is make sure that you have a very detailed project cash flow laid out for your project and every project. If you don't have one, we have one on our website. You can certainly access it. Just go to mobilizationfunding.com to the resources page, cash flow tool. But here's what the cash flow is going to help you do. You'll know when you need to spend money and when you don't. You'll know based on the schedule what you're supposed to order and when, so that you have certain lead times, if you're going to make payroll, labor, etc. And so if a schedule changes, you can instantly adjust that schedule, which is going to instantly let you know when you need to order things. And so, for example, if there's going to be a 1 or 2 or 3 week project delay, you might not want to order that material at the same exact time as you might have prior, because yes, you want the material there and yes, it's great. However, if you don't have a ton of extra cash and you're running this project as well as other projects and your business is pretty cash flow tight, which doesn't mean there's anything wrong with your business. It just means that construction's difficult and you're always going to be managing cash. You may want to hold off on that $50,000, $75,000, $100,000 material order or any amount that it is, because that extra order, the use of that $100,000, if you anticipated being reimbursed or paid for that at a certain period of time and now there's a project delay and that's going to delay your payment, that means you're going to have to float that material amount for an extra 2 or 3 weeks or whatever the delay period is. And so you want to manage around that. Lastly, you want to start to communicate with your project managers routinely and often. That means your accounting department needs to know there's a delay, your project managers need to know there's a delay. The whole company inside your organization needs to know there's a delay, because anything that could be impacted throughout the organization from that delay should be known, and you want to communicate that through your department. Next, communication has to be with your general contractor or the project owner. Whatever's creating and causing that delay on the project, you want to know in real time, day by day. And you want to be proactive, because you don't want to get a phone call today to be on site tomorrow. You want to know that when you're anticipated being on the site, you want to be planning for that, and then you want to be following up daily to make sure if that schedule's changed at all or that delay has been created. And there's a lot of different reasons for delays. Obviously, engineering and design delays is different than waiting for the trade partners in front of you to hurry up and get done, or maybe there's a delay in material that's supposed to come, maybe there's a delay in crane. I mean, there could be a million different things creating the delay. So knowing what the delay is being created by, but following up on a routine basis, make sure there's no schedule changes, so you don't have that call today to show up tomorrow and you're not ready for it. And the last thing that you can do to help manage cash flow during the delays is have your finance partners working with you right from the start. Look at the different alternative financing options. If you don't have enough cash to manage through that delay, have those relationships with your partners in advance and upfront. Know that you can reach out to them. Know what time it takes for them to help you get money or get access to money. If you have lines of credit, make sure you're leaving room on your line of credit open to help manage this delay for these extra costs. And maybe the costs aren't going to occur during the delay, but maybe it's going to occur 3 or 4 weeks after the delay starts, because that's where the pinch point is going to be now, because everything's moved out. So make sure you're planning for those things, but also communicate with your lenders, look for other lenders, and be doing that proactively, not during the delay, but well in advance of any project starting, so that you have a relationship already that you can reach right out to start to help you. Okay? Now you're back on the project. The delay is over. Now you got to make up time. Here's what you need to figure out. Figure out and look through your cash flow again. Understand where there's some opportunities in the new schedule. And when I say new schedule, I mean the new updated schedule post-delay. There may be opportunities to gain some efficiencies in there. Maybe that delay impacted you by a couple weeks, but maybe it really impacted the trade partners behind you by 3 or 4 weeks, or maybe it accelerated them. And what that means is you may have more room in that phase of the schedule to maximize some opportunities. It might mean you have less time. And so you may be able to monitor that schedule and then manage accordingly. And let me give you an example. Maybe you have time for 1 or 2 weeks to put an extra crew on a project to get that project done. So you can kind of speed through that phase, make up a little of that delay while one of your other projects is down. Maybe you need to actually order materials right away. Maybe you can order materials later. Maybe those materials can be put in. Maybe it means that you need to have the owner or conversation to do owner direct purchasing, or maybe your GC needs to purchase that. There's a lot of different ways that you can accelerate that schedule, but learning from the process is most important so that you can always manage around that. So take an hour, take 2 hours, have a meeting with your project management team, have a meeting with the accounting team, bring everybody together and decompress over what happened and what you can do in the future, not only for new projects, but for the existing project based on the new project schedule. That's a critical component. Doing that right after you get started on that project and you have eyes back on it and your crew is on it and you're working is really important to figure out how you can manage that schedule now moving forward so that you can make sure that you're still successful in the overall project. In conclusion, so we've talked about construction delays. We've talked about the impact of them, cash flow, your work schedule, your labor force, the stress it can put on your team. We've talked about the ways to mitigate around that. You have operational ways. You can put contingencies in your contract, and you can certainly and should put contractual clauses in your contract for how you're going to charge or invoice your customer if and when there are delays. That takes all the ambiguity out of it and saves you a lot of time and headache. We've also talked about ways you can manage your labor force internally and on other projects to help you work through these delays. We've talked about taking the time after a delay to manage your schedule moving forward, bring your whole team together to understand exactly what happened and what you can do differently. Maybe that delay wasn't your fault, but when I say what you can do differently, now that you have a new schedule post-delay, how can you gain some efficiencies? Where can you make up time? How can you be a hero to your customer and really help them? That's a key thing too. That gives you a great opportunity to shine. And lastly, if you found these videos helpful, if you found any of this information impactful, please use it, share it with your team, and share it with your friends. Subscribe to our channel if you like other industry insights, and if there's anything we can help you with, please reach out anytime. God bless you. Have a great day.